Hi, and welcome to Tuesday Talkies, where we discuss items that are affecting you in the music business. Joining me today, we have Sam Tall and the Duke. If you have any questions during the show, please post them in the chat. And be sure to follow us and sign up at musicindustrycity.com to stay abreast of what's happening around you. So let's kick this off. Yesterday, IFPI dropped their annual global music report stating the music industry generated $20.2 billion in wholesale revenues, which is an increase of 8.2% from the prior year. They did note that there was a slight downturn of 5.3% physical music revenues, which has been on a decline for years, which is completely understandable. Dropped down to $4.4 billion, but that was offset with the growth in streaming that generated $11.4 billion last year, which is 22% year-over-year growth. So those are looking good. Paid streaming accounts, those are on the rise. They rose to 341 million subscribers, which is up 33.5%. That is looking good. With those streaming numbers looking good, though, there is a caution to heed. The total worldwide take was 11.4 billion. Granted, that was up by 2.2 billion year over year. The issue, or the concern, we could say, is that those 2.2 billion has been the magic number in year-over-year growth since 2017. So we're not getting that extra kick each year. It's kind of flattened out. But we'll see like what the future's going to bring, especially with what's happening right now with the lockdowns, the quarantines, and how streaming consumption has changed. So, 2020 is going to have an asterisk next to it when we look back in all of the history books. And it'll be very interesting to see what Q2 of this year and what Q3, and as we start opening back up and people are going back to work, how is that going to affect overall revenue? So, and streaming consumption. So with me now is Sam Tall on his take on the latest report. Sam.
Hey, Peter. I think it's a really positive sign. It's the kind of thing that I expected, being relatively younger, being relatively native to streaming. When I started in the music business, Spotify was first kind of getting ready to launch and then initially launching in the US. And so it's been almost 10 years of Spotify in the US. And just knowing that user experience so well, it's no wonder to me that this has seen such uptake. And with the really rapid, they can say that there's slowing growth in streaming, but it's because it's reaching a mass adoption. You're not going to grow 30% every year forever. It's impossible. But we're seeing the same kind of rapid expansion of that segment of the overall revenue pie that we saw with the introduction of CDs and the waning of tapes, right? So the adoption's really fast. Hopefully we don't see a balloon period like we did with CDs. Hopefully we can actually see sustained revenue because it's monthly subscriptions or other kind of subscription models that are recurring as opposed to individual purchases. I think this is the thing that is going to buffer us from future impact. But I did see some criticism of this, and I don't get how it's warranted.
What was it that you were seeing?
So, of course, there's still every detractor that can say, oh, streaming doesn't pay. Well, evidently, streaming pays a hell of a lot, and somebody else in the pipeline isn't paying. But so I also saw this piece of news that Tim Westergren, who founded Pandora, or I guess co-founded, he was recently CEO and then left Pandora after the company really started slipping, and he's launching a new platform called Sessions. And Sessions is a sort of audio live stream platform that's engineered less to be like a passive live streaming thing, which I think Twitch kind of falls in that realm to some degree, and more in his terms, sort of this Asian live stream model where the platform isn't even built around streaming. It's built around commerce and engagement actions that cost money.
Well, and
streaming is just say that?
The gamifications.
The gamification of the live stream, the commercialization, the transactionalization. And I like that. I get it. But his sort of argument here is premium streaming subscriptions are slowing down artistry and industrial growth. And I can't square that. I don't know how to make sense of that.
It's interesting. I mean, going back to, and I saw, the article that you sent me, from Fast Company about Tim. I mean, he co-founder, he's, founded Pandora in 2006. And, one of the quotes that was really interesting about it when he was talking about, because if we remember that he was CEO, then he stepped away, and then it was brought back in. And at that time, it was that is the Steve Jobs returns to Apple kind of
right.
feeling.
Like, he's really smart. I've met him at one time, and I've seen him speak on a panel. Like, he's really, really smart, and he's a very nice guy. And I just don't get what he's talking about now.
Well, here's the one quote from that article. And he said, "When I founded Pandora, the purpose of it was to build a discovery engine for lesser known musicians. I wouldn't say we lost our way, but we got sucked into the music industrial complex vortex." So what is going to prevent sessions? I already look at this as saying, like, okay, another streaming platform.
Yeah.
Great. Built for emerging, fledgling artists to be able to generate more revenue. What's going to stop that from the 1% of the artists already out there from jumping on that platform and taking all the attention away and bringing all their fans with them?
I mean, like,
can you block them? Is that something like there's platforms that say you have to be a certain level to be on this platform? Well, what if you're at a certain level, you're not allowed to be on this platform?
Well, first off, I don't think that's a sustainable business model. I don't think you can build a really strong and worthwhile business by kicking off your most valuable users. But I mean, if you look at, your Twitch, or your Mixer or your Caffeine or other, the live streaming platforms that are focused around gaming, right? Those are dominated by superstar streamers who get thousands, if not tens of thousands of concurrent viewers, which is a really strong pull. And over the course of a stream being multiple hours, if not a full day, and then with the archive playback, we're talking millions and millions of views in, unique viewers on these live streams. That's not the case for most people on those platforms. The case is tens, maybe hundreds is good performance over a longer stream. And yeah, you can turn that into a modest income, and that's not a bad thing. We definitely need a robust middle class of creators so that the job of creating can be sustained. But to suggest that, like, oh, this is going to be an audio platform for live streams for independent, newly discovered, brilliant, passionate artists, like, yeah, well, every platform is that. Every platform is for that. So I don't get, like, why this is different, and also why it has to be contrarian with premium streaming.
Right. And also we go back to the 800-pound gorilla that Facebook with messengers. Now they've competed with the Zooms and the WebEx. And also now they're putting together the revenue. You can stream and you can generate revenue on your live streams. So it's always like something new, innovative. Facebook is going to take it. Facebook has the network effect, but looking at the different cuts. So I do want to go back to one thing on the platform though, and is it that it's turning into something like the artists have to now turn to gamification in that sense, because many of these, like the YouNows, the Twitches, they have all. And so I was looking at this and I said, similar to the other services, they also have avatars called emojis. Fans can buy virtual gifts for an artist, as well as pay for shout outs and song requests. So now are you just a performing seal at this point?
Yeah, I mean,
and artists can also earn money through bonuses based on their weekly rank, which is determined by a gamified point system involving collecting stars and completing missions. What the hell is this? And Dave, I want to bring up the Duke. Duke, come on.
Dude, really, like, how would this work for you?
I want you to talk about this, like, coming from an artist standpoint. Everyone, welcome to Duke. How you doing, sir?
Good to be here. I'm good.
Glad to have you. Always a pleasure. So tell us, like, what are your thoughts on, like, there's Instagram, there's Twitch, we can go on and on about the streaming platforms. But when I say something like, as an artist, I can sit there and it's like, I can, as well as fans can pay for shout outs and song requests And you know, these are things that a Patreon have done. Like, you know, if support my Patreon, I'll give you a shout out in my albums, or you know what Pledge Music used to do, and
Right.
like I'll give you an album, I'll give you a credit on the album, I'll give you a shout out. But now it's like we're talking about the week. You know, artists can earn more money through bonuses based on the weekly rank, determined by a gamified point system involving collecting stars. So is this turning into a beggar's thing? Like, oh, make sure you hit that star button, please, 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 please. What are your thoughts on this coming from the artist side?
Yeah, I feel like it's a two-sided, because on the artist side, it's like if you're not earning so much as like somebody that's on a Jay-Z level or anywhere in that capacity where you can just make all your own calls, then you're living for the dollars basically, so that it makes sense so you can continue to make art. So you want to continue to make art, so then you're hustling. And if somebody says, hey man, like shout me out, I'll give you $100, it's like, it's easy, you know what I mean? What's up, Timmy? Shout out to Timmy, you know what I'm saying? This song's for you, bro, you know, whatever. It's like, that's just love, you know what I'm saying? And but then on the other side, it's like, you know, it's like the art side of, if art matters, you know, this is like where the Joni Mitchell type of energy comes in, but it's like, if art matters, then it needs to be untainted by such things. Do you know what I'm saying? And then what is art and all the levels of art? But it also, I find it interesting because it's like making a video game out of, you know, the whole thing. It's like they're making their own video game of a streaming thing.
I worry that trivializes it, and like that the making a video game out of it creates a trivial perception of the craft of performing music as an art form, as opposed to just a sort of song and dance thing. But it almost like strikes me as like virtual busking, where every street corner has a different musician on it. So maybe it's more like a New Orleans kind of busking, but I just don't know that that's like the ideal. I know for sure from having done it and from, you know, knowing musicians who do it really well, it's like you can make a decent income from busking, especially in a city like New York or another city that caters to arts and culture. But like, I just don't know that that's like a model for the masses to adopt.
There was an app called Busker, and I don't know if it's still around. And it was Busker, and there were a few people that were making some good money on there. And there was, you know, one woman, like the case study was she was out on the Santa Monica Pier. She was doing her thing, but she would prep it. So there's two things here. So she would prep it like, hey, talk to you, because she would live stream and just in conversation and say like, oh, if you like tip me or something, then when I do my performance. So there's two things on this about that shout out thing. Like Patreon was, you know, it was ahead of time. So you planned it. Now it's like, this is almost like an interrupting the performance. It's not necessarily performance. It's a one-on-one conversation, meeting, engagement. And maybe that's what it's really designed for. It's not designed for this performance in that sense. And some people are going to be like, hey, you know, give me $100. Yo, send me $100. I'll shout out your name. That's a good thing. But at what point then the detractors, also other people is going to say, and you mentioned about the art form, is you're not making money with your music, your art, what you've created. You're making money by just saying somebody's name instead of playing.
I feel you on that. You know, at the same time, it's like I get a message from Riff Raff on Facebook, you know, and he's doing some type of thing for artists and stuff. It's like, what is all that? You know what I'm saying? It's all the same vibe. You know, if it's a game, it's a game. Not everybody has to play that game. Not everybody has to be Riff Raff. People can be, you know, whatever they want to be. But it's an interesting thing to talk about, because you're talking about the future and what is to be, you know. So this is really a visionary conversation. So kudos to everybody involved in this conversation.
I like what you said there. Not everyone has to play the game. And so, yeah, I'm not saying like this is a bad thing. This is a good thing. It's going to be great for some people that are into it. You know, it's influencers. It's, you know, it's spokespeople. You're getting paid, you know, to be a spokesperson for a particular company because, you know, whatever, Sam Waterhouse, TD Waterhouse, or pick any model that is whatever. So it's in a similar sense that you're getting paid to be an influencer or to be that public persona. And, you know, you're getting paid for, you know, they're not getting paid for their talent. They're getting paid because people are tuning in already because of their talent. So now it's like, here's the tip, here's the engagement. So yeah, it could be different ways. And, like Sam, coming from like a manager standpoint, I mean, do you look at this and say, to your artists, you should be looking out for this? And then what's the manager's cut?
I mean, I'm not looking out for this. I don't know anybody who asked for something like this to be made. I don't know anybody who's like holding their breath for the next great idea from Tim Westergren, founder of Pandora. And I don't think anybody, if you had told them that this was what it would be, they would have believed you. I think everyone's really concerned at this point, especially among managers that I talk to frequently, about sort of active, engaging forms of entertainment. And what I mean by that is things that require a certain amount of focus and participation in terms of mental capacity. So things like video are high engagement and active and lean in, even if you just kind of watch a live stream for 30 minutes and it's, traditionally speaking, it's lean back. You still have to pay attention and watch, because otherwise you're going to miss some facet of it. Whereas music, you can put it on the background and go about your house and let it play and still enjoy it, but you're not sitting there focused, active listening, which is a rare thing since we don't have to worry about getting up and flipping the record over as much anymore. So we don't have to participate in the playing of the music. But we do have to turn on and turn off the TV, activate the live stream, follow the comments. There's a lot of eye candy with visual content. So a lot of managers, even for their music clients, are putting a strategy together that focuses around visual productivity and distributing music through a visual medium as opposed to purely audio, which, in my other work through, the YouTube land and all that kind of stuff, that's a very high consistency audience type that engages with that kind of content,
Well,
so
it's that TikTok. It's now
exactly.
It's like, how do I get on TikTok? How do I get my music on TikTok so somebody who's a video star, short form video star, can put my music in there?
Well, it's a facet of not just how do I get my music on TikTok, but how do I get a following on TikTok and become a TikToker and use that as a vehicle. And frankly, the musicians who get into visual creation have a hard time finding what their visual voice is. Whereas kids who are native influencers and they just young, pretty people who build up hundreds of thousands or even millions of followers and then decide that they want to put out a single or two, that single performs really well because they have a built-in marketing channel. Mm-hmm. Because they have an engaged fan base around a visual medium. So,
and that's the other thing now. And to wrap this up, we got, now you have a new platform that you got to bring your fans over to. So if you don't have your email addresses, you can't tell them to where to go, because what are you going to do on Instagram? Go tell them to follow you on sessions, and Facebook, go tell them to follow you on sessions.
Download this app, set up an account, maybe even pay some money. No.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. Thank you, Sam. That was great. A lot to think about there. I want to bring up Duke again. Duke, as an artist, we're talking about staying creative during the quarantine, and many artists are doing a lot, delving into production, doing the live streaming as everybody else is doing. What are your thoughts on staying creative during the quarantine? What are you doing? Some tips that you can give, and from your experience, and how what you can do it through social media. So what are your thoughts on this?
Staying creative in quarantine for artists. You know what I'm saying? It's if you're an artist, then you're going to create, whether it's a quarantine or it's not a quarantine. Quarantine is just putting you in your house and locking you away from the outside world. So you're still going to create. You're just going to create different things. It shouldn't be hard for you to create things if you're an artist and if that's what you love to do. Quarantine is just going to give you a different color to paint with on the canvas on this one. You know what I'm saying?
And artists are used to for you see those memes around. It's an artist, a producer, people during quarantine freaking out. Musicians during quarantines, yeah, we got this. Because we're used to locking ourselves in the basement. So that, what do you, then looking at social media, what are some of the tips that if you can take that time of breaking away from the creative process, and then saying, hey, how am I going to engage my audience better, or how am I going to make some business connections in social media?
Yeah, what I feel? I feel I only went to high school for 1 year and then I dropped out, but ninth grade was a good year. I feel like high school is the thing where it's you're kind of getting where you are in the scope of in the world, like who are the strong ones, who are the pretty ones, who are the smart ones, the short ones, the tall ones, and I feel the same thing about social media. It's like, as you put things out, people are going to find the things that you put out, and those will be your fans. Those will be your friends. And if you treat them like it's just like there's the homie walking down the hallway, like give homie a high five. Like I remember just, growing up in Brooklyn, there was a certain vibe, but it was like I gave daps to everybody because everybody was cool unless they weren't cool. And if they weren't cool, like, you can just translate that to social media. If somebody says something stupid, it's like, nah, B, we not even responding to that. But everybody else, you know what I'm saying? Those are the homies. And that's how you build the social media thing. Treat it like it's the real world, because it is the real world. It's just the little square versions of people,
I think that's really great, because a lot of people are looking at this, with social media and saying it's like we're in this box, and it's like it feels plastic. It feels a little inauthentic at times. But when you relate it to like, giving that high five, and, the high five is not just hitting that like button. It's about engaging, because a high five is a physical action. And that way it's like, there's something there. So if you get in their comments, like slide into their DMs and be like, hey, that was really good stuff right there. Not just like hitting that like give them that personal attachment as opposed to just a comment. You hit their DMs, you're like, you are now building a relationship.
Yeah, and you know what else I feel too about life and just in general, like, shooting your shots and just like making your dreams come true. It's like, and I've always loved putting quarters in the machines where you get like the little toy that comes in the little bubble. You put your quarter in, so that's like your chance. And like sometimes nothing will come out. No bubbles will come out, no toys. Sometimes 2 toys will come out. Sometimes 1 toy will come out. You don't really know what you're gonna get, but you're putting yourself in the game. You're gonna miss all the shots that you don't take. So you gotta take your shots, Even the greatest 3-point shooters, they miss half the time. You know what I mean?
I love it. I think we're going to wrap up on that, because there's 2 things said throughout today was getting in the game, staying in the game, and shoot the shots. Right there, I think we're going to call it a day. It's a wrap. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Duke. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
All right.
Peter.
Peace out, everybody.